Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show. And with me right now, I've got a very special guest. He is a living legend, WWE Hall of Famer, two-time AWA heavyweight champion. I'm pleased to welcome the one and only Larry Zbyszko. Welcome, Larry, to Wrestling with Heart.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Yeah, so good to have you on. I've been wanting to have you on here for a while. Talk to me about your childhood and upbringing. Where are you from?
Well, I was born 1951 on the south side of Chicago. And then maybe 3-4 years later, my dad, who worked for U.S. Steel, bought his first house in Lansing, Illinois, which is like a little suburb right outside Chicago. And I went from 1 to 7th grade in Lansing, Illinois. And then he got transferred to Pittsburgh, where I started 8th grade and then spent the rest of my growing up, 8th grade, high school, and all that, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I met my hero, Bruno.
It's amazing, growing up Chicago, Windy City, moving to a new city, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Talk to me about your love of the business. Were you always a fan of wrestling? Was that something that you enjoyed watching, or was that something you fell into a little bit later on?
Well, you know what? It was weird because when I was growing up in 1951, baby, but 52, 53, everybody started getting a television set. Every house had a big giant antenna on top, and you only got 3 channels. ABC, NBC, CBS, and maybe one public thing. So I grew up with 3 stations. Now there's 3,000. And I really didn't see any wrestling until I moved to Pittsburgh. And on Pittsburgh television, they had a show, Studio Wrestling. And that's the first time I saw professional wrestling. And it's something that struck me because what it was in those days was really a story of good versus evil, which is in every human being. We root for the good and we want to get rid of the evil. And Bruno Sammartino was the big hero of the day that looked like a gorilla. I mean, really believable. And when I watched that, I said, God, I could be a professional wrestler. And I started wrestling in high school. I actually started football and wrestling, but the football coach ticked me off, so I threw my pads at him and didn't play football anymore.
That's crazy.
But then, that's the first time I saw wrestling was in Pittsburgh. Whatever year it was, I went to 8th grade.
So Bruno was the guy you grew up watching on television, right?
Yeah, he was the big hero in those days of the territories in the WWF, and Pittsburgh was one of the towns.
Well, let's talk about Bruno Sammartino. What was it about Bruno that made you go, this is really cool. I want to find a way to get into this.
The thing about Bruno was he was genuine and real. He was a very humble, nice, loving guy. And he came across as himself, and people could feel that. He was a very humble guy. He wasn't some guy on TV who, you might thinks he's better than you because he's on TV, or, he's got some kind of ego because he's a star. He was a very humble, he was himself, really a very humble, giving, loving guy. But also the way he looked, you believed he could kick the devil's ass.
So that's when you knew you wanted to get in the business.
Yeah,
And
he was my inspiration to get in the business. And it was weird how I met him because actually, I'll tell you one short story and then tie it up and it gives me goosebumps. But when I moved to Pittsburgh, my parents would drag me to church every Sunday to this little church called St. Anne's. We lived in the North Hills of Pittsburgh. And one time I'm sitting in a pew in church and I was, like in eighth grade. And I'm sitting there and I look next to me and I see this guy with this big head, this big broken nose, big cauliflowered, weird looking ears, huge chest. And I'm going, my God, I'm sitting next to Bruno. I mean, as like a kid in eighth grade, what are you, 13? I don't, I freaked out. And after mass, I ran after him with a bulletin and got his autograph. And the reason I'm saying this is because when Bruno died, I flew back to Pittsburgh for his funeral. And his mass was held in the very same little church, St. Anne's. And I was sitting there basically in the same pew. So it was like the first time I've ever met him, my hero, and the last time I would ever be by him, in the casket, was the same exact place 50 years later. I mean, it was beyond coincidence.
yeah, it's like a full circle moment.
Yeah, it was meant to be kind of weird thing.
So Bruno helped train you, bring you in the business, mentor you. What were some things that he had told you early on to help guide you along, and any tips that you can recall that you've even applied to today, even after wrestling?
Well, what I applied in my whole life because of him was the qualities he had. Your word is your contract. The truth beats everything. I mean, he was honest, truthful. What he said, he meant. And that's what I modeled myself after was his. And a lot of people back in those days, too, after the war and all that, was your word is your contract. You're an honest, caring, loving guy, loved your neighbors. I mean, you were a human being. We're beings, we're not animals. And the funny part was when I was 16, I found out where Bruno lived, which was a few miles down the road from my house. So when I got my first piece of junk car at 16, I was like a junior in high school, maybe or something. I would drive by his house once in a while. And one day I drove by and he had these big, thick hedges around his backyard with a pool in the backyard. And one day I drove by and I saw Bruno standing by his pool getting a tan. And I freaked out. I stopped the car and I couldn't help it. I crawled through this guy's hedges and he hears the bushes crackling and looks at me. And I come through the bushes and introduced myself. And that's how the whole thing started. And I told him I was wrestling at North Allegheny, and he was impressed with that because I was very good. And there was a time in his career where he didn't wrestle every day. He didn't do all the smaller towns. He just wrestled on the weekends in the big arenas.
Yeah.
So we had a chance and we started working out together. He had a gym set up in his basement. And there wasn't much equipment there. He had a bench, heavy dumbbells, and God, that's about it. A curl bar. But I did Bruno's workout, and his workout was heavyweight, low reps. And when I started working out, I don't know what the hell I was doing. But when I turned 21, I weighed 245 pounds. I wrestled 180 in high school.
Hmm.
And then at 21, when I started, I weighed 245, and my best bench was 465 pounds with the 1 second pause. But I did Bruno's workout and then got that kind of build that resembled him a little bit, that thick chest and the bigger. I used to have muscles, you can see. But
Yeah, physique.
yeah, but just working out with him for some years. And as we worked out, we talk about the wrestling business and he'd give me some tips and show me some holds. Bruno wasn't like a shooter kind of wrestler. He was very simple, bear hug, pick up the guy for the backbreaker. There was guys that knew more wrestling than Bruno, but Bruno was very simple and so strong, and he didn't have a neck. His neck was so big, and his trap muscles came to his ears, so it's like you couldn't really hurt the guy, you know.
It's
But he hooked
unbelievable.
me up with other people, from Chief J Strongbow, guys from England. There was some other guys in there that were what they'd call shooters. They knew how to really hurt you. It wasn't amateur wrestling. It was how to break your arm, how to pop your shoulder out, how to put someone to sleep for real. And I met these guys through Bruno, and they'd help me because they wouldn't help anybody else in those days because it was a very closed shop. But they'd help me because I was Bruno's protege. So I had a political connection I didn't realize.
Yeah, you learn all these different holds, these different tricks, kind of like an old school way of learning and training and getting that putting all that work in. So you made your debut in 1971. Talk to me about your first few matches. How did you feel after them? Were you nervous? Were you
Was it
afraid?
71?
Early 70s.
73, I think, was my first match. And it was at a high school, a smaller show around Pittsburgh. And I was so nervous. Like I was supposed to be on the opening bout, and the promoter, if it Rudy Miller or somebody, okay, okay, Larry, let's go. You ready? I go, oh, wait a minute. Can I go on second? I was like so nervous. So he says, okay, well, loosen up and we'll go to second match. So then I remember walking out in the crowd, and the first thing that hit me that you don't think of is all I was wearing was a little pair of tights and boots. And during the winter there, everybody else had jackets and clothes and sitting in them. I felt like I was naked walking out in front of a crowd of people. That's the first thing that hit my mind because you don't realize that. And walking up the steps to the ring, I felt like almost numb. I was so nervous. And I was in with a guy who wasn't that good. And I think I beat the hell out of the poor guy. I was just so nervous. I mean, yeah, but knew what I was doing. And so, but that was the very first thing I realized. Oh my God, I got no clothes on. And everybody in the place is dressed.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, something you don't expect.
No, definitely unpredictable. So you got into have an amazing career, both in the ring and also as a commentator. Talk to me about some of the people you've gotten to wrestle against, because I know you've gotten to wrestle Bruno, had a feud with Nick Bockwinkel, and so many other people. Who are some of your favorite opponents that you got to compete against over the years?
Well, you know what? I had kind of great matches with everybody in those days because they all knew what they were doing. I mean, Bruno and me was the biggest thing that happened at the end of the old school era, right before the territories were going to go out and nationwide cable was going to come in and change everything. But Nick Bockwinkel, he was in there a while. He was great in the ring. I wrestled Harley Race, Ray Stevens. I mean, I'm trying to think of all the guys, but it was a different day than today. And everybody knew what they were doing. So it was easy to get to the crowd. The crowds were different. It wasn't like today with the cheat sheets and all the podcasts where or to watch the WWE show and they come on and go, oh, that was a great heel turn, and then you're talking smart. I mean, it was a different world. People believed. And I'm trying to think of more guys because there was guys, I mean, I wrestled Tommy Rich for an hour. And after that, Luthez came up to me and said, Larry, that was the best hour match I've ever seen. And I wrestled another guy in Texas, Cowboy something, I can't remember. And after that, Harley Race came up to me and said, Larry, you're the greatest wrestling heel I've ever seen. Because with all the training I had in the psychology I knew from Bruno and the old school guys, people really hated me. And even in the days of the mid 80s when things were changing, the generation of fans was changing, the sheet sheets were popping up. I would still go in the ring and people would be chanting, Larry sucks, Larry sucks. Because no matter what they thought of professional wrestling, they believed in real life I was a true a-hole. I had that knowledge to get their believability in a character that really wasn't me, but they believed it was me.
I definitely think that the suspense of disbelief is very important to have because you got to believe in that character that he's, this heel's, playing against
Yeah,
the rules. And so
yeah.
you have to really like get the crowd invested so you want to see the heel lose.
Oh,
And make
yeah. And that's human nature. You want to see good overcome evil, the good guy beat the bad guy. And that's all the TV shows back then we grew up with. I'm hooked on the old Perry Mason murder mysteries. I always catch the bad guy at the end, or the old cowboy movies, and all that stuff.
what do you feel is like the best part about being a heel?
Well, the best part is it's what kind of drew the crowds because if they really hated you, they would buy the ticket and show up. It wasn't like today where you get contracts and money and all that. Back in the old days, if you didn't sell tickets, you didn't eat. So people really had to have emotional feelings about some a-hole, they couldn't stand, so the characters had to know what they were doing, and you had also, they took advantage of things like after World War II, the Japanese guys would be like instant heels, or the German guys strutting around the ring would be, use that and to get people, irritated and all that, anything they could. And one of the important things was also the difference that took guys to the top level was their ability to talk on the microphone, do an interview. The guys who became stars were good on the stick. Like today, I watch wrestling and they stand in the ring for 10, 15 minutes, and one guy is talking and talking and talking about being friends. And then someone else walks out and interrupts. And then you got two guys just standing there talking and talking. If 20 minutes goes by and nothing happened yet, it's a different ball game than it used to be. And you got a different fan base, a different
It's
reality.
evolved. It's changed.
Yeah, it's different.
When you watch today though, do you do you see anybody that stands out do you see anybody that you go, man, this guy's a really good heel. This person's getting so much heat.
Well, that's the thing that's the difference because the audience is with it so much. You've got you've got ring, whether it's Raw or SmackDown or the newbies in NXT, they're really amazing athletes. And you got ring, they're amazing athletes. And the people know that. But instead of really doing like wrestling characters, they're all doing the same thing. They're running up and back on the ropes. They're flipping over the top and someone's out on the floor to catch them. They're standing on the top turnbuckle and back flipping midair and crash through tables. I mean, but they're all doing it, so they're all kind of like the same, and there's not that there's not that like it used to be where, oh, I love this guy and oh, I hate this guy. People watch it and they go, oh, hey, both these guys are great. They're going to put on a hell of a show. It's a whole different mentality.
I think one person who I feel that's done extremely well in the modern era as far as getting heel heat, is MJF. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's on AEW. But
An
he's
AEW guy. Yeah, I don't watch. Yeah, once in a while I'll click on and off. I mean, I'll check out Raw. I'll watch NXT. I live 5 miles from the PC, and I'll check out to see if there's any newbies that have, what I think, you need to get to be a somebody. And JF, to be honest with you, I don't know what to say about the guy. I think he's a guy that I think stands around wearing a scarf.
hmm
And even the announcers are out there screaming, boy, they're putting on a great performance. And they are. But it's the same performance like every match almost. And then they stand there and they slap each other. I'll slap you in the chest, you slap me in the chest. If it were you in a real fight, are you going to slap the guy? No. So it's a different form of entertainment.
It's definitely changed. It's definitely evolved over the
Yeah.
years. Um, Now I want to switch gears and talk about some of the stuff you've done outside of the ring, outside of wrestling. What kinds of things have you done to make a difference in your community, whether it's volunteering for like animal shelters or donating food to food banks or visiting hospitals? Has there been something over the years that you have been involved with?
I got, four sons, five grandkids. So my time is donated. I'm busy taking care of and helping out the family. A couple of them have a tough time. I'll help them out. One's
Well,
rent goes up for no reason. So
well,
I'm
let's
really kind of busy with the family.
Well, let's talk about, raising your family and helping them out because I think that's important. Family is
Well, that is.
essential. And I think being there for them is extremely important. Talk to me about that, because
Well, I'm proud of them all because they're all working hard. None of them have gotten into the stupid drug culture thing. One's got three grandkids, one's got two grandkids, one's got one grandkid. My one, two, my third son, John, he's in the Air Force, and he's stationed on Air Force Two. I really enjoy, helping out the kids and making sure they do good. If they need a hand, I'm there to help them. And I'm proud of them all because, like I said, none of them went away into the drug world or the stupid nonsense. They all got jobs and doing a great job with the grandkids.
well, let's
And it's a
talk.
full-time job.
I mean, it's a lot of work, being
Yeah.
able to take care of so many people. You're helping them, making a difference in their life because they need that parental guardian father figure in their life to be
Yeah.
able
I
to
mean,
grow
a
up in a
good
world.
example. So put it, and I mean, I've done some things like I donated to State Troopers Fund. I donated to one.
Well, let's talk about an example of a moment that was very heartwarming and a touching moment where you're able to help out one of your kids that made you go, man, this was really what humanity means to me.
Well, you're getting deep in the soul here, Stan. Um, I'm thinking, but I mean, it's worked out kind of good for me because I was always there to be there. I mean, it wasn't like any of my kids had a tough time, or like I said, they weren't in drug counseling, they weren't locked up, they didn't do crime. There was, and then, they all had their own idea. I mean, I kind of lucked out in terms of that, But I was a good influence and a good father, and they grew up knowing what's good and what's bad and what's horrible and stupid. Because it's a parent's job with the kids, really, to get them there. And once they get there, hopefully you really shouldn't have to put a lot of time into them, because once they're grown up and they got their kids, they're their own men, you know.
Yeah, I mean what's that saying? It takes a lot to raise a village.
Yeah, so I wish I could tell you some great things I've done, but I've been lucky, and us I have a few bucks here and there with some rent help or this or that. And I really, haven't needed to save the day or have one of my kids in rehab or
Well, you've
you
been a
know.
you've been a positive influence, I'm sure, like being able to uh, be there for one of your kids if they're going through a hard time. I don't know if your kids were ever like big, sports fans. Were you ever there like, Little League, or I'm sure like were
Oh
you
yeah,
able.
well, a couple of them. Well, one was into Little League, one was into soccer big time. The Air Force guy, John. Tim was into football a little bit, but and he didn't.
Did you
Mike was into
coach? Did
to
you do any
golf.
kind of, training or help them kind of guide them along whenever they were going through something?
Well, I'd give them advice, when they needed it, and but I really can't put my finger. I mean, there was never like a disaster, but they were raised right, and they listened to their teachers. They listened to like their baseball coach. They listened to their soccer coach, and I'd be there to support them. And I was just always there for them, and they knew I'd be there. But they became their own. And once they hit 16 and they go, "Hey, Dad, can you help me out getting a new, my first car?" They're going on their own way, and they should already have in their mind what's right and wrong. And if you do it this way, you're going to have a good life. If you do it that way, you're going to, wind up in the street, wind up in jail, wind up in the hospital or the graveyard. You know how many young wrestlers I knew that were great that are now dead, from like Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Hennig and some other guys,
There's so
to
many.
stupid drugs. It's way too many. It's too bad.
Well, I think it's important, when you're there for someone, that you want to make sure that they're living life the way it's supposed to be. You want to stay away from all the bad stuff. It's good to have a parental figure there to guide them along. And kudos to
Yeah.
you,
And I
for
think, I mean, a lot of kids that are having problems come from a fatherless home, or I guess there's probably more women, more kids without fathers than without mothers. But, but I was lucky, and I always did good in the business. So I was always able to take care of family. We always had a decent place to live, and they went to good schools, and I worked my butt off to make sure that everything went to my family. You know,
yeah,
so I can't complain, and you can boo on me.
I love it.
I'll
Well,
tell you
Larry,
a story about that.
yeah, yeah.
Well, you know what? I want to kick myself in the butt for being stupid. But back in 1980, when everybody hated my guts, I was the most hated guy with the Bruno feud. A couple of friends of mine were starting a sound studio in their basement, and I know nothing about music. They said, "Hey, you want to help us come down and you can sing a song, and we're going to put the music in." So I said, "Wait a minute," and I was a bad guy. Everybody wanted to kill me. So I wrote and I sung one song, and I did it in one take in the little sound studio they made, and told them what kind of music I think it should have, and they put the music together. And the name of the song is "Boo on Me." And I made some 45s out of it back in 1980 and sold some. There's some out there autographed that are extremely rare.
mm.
But Boo on Me. The thing that ticks me off about how stupid I was so into the character of being a real a-hole. Like in the mid 80s, when things started changing in the business, guys would come out to the ring and there'd be music. They'd, be playing music and doing an entrance. Well, hell, there was some perfect parts. I could have been coming out to some of the Boo on Me because everybody was booing the hell out of me. And I never even thought about it.
It's hilarious.
And the weird part is a guy I know at Pro Wrestling Tees heard the song because it's been on YouTube forever. I have no idea how it got there. And then a friend of mine put it on Spotify.
Hmm.
And I think if you go to Spotify and punch in Boo on Me, you can hear the song. And to get a t-shirt, I think it says on Boo on Me, but Pro Wrestling Tees make Boo on Me t-shirts.
Hmm.
And I was, if I knew better, if I was more into the showbiz side and the merchandise that was starting in the mid later 80s, I could have came out with a Boo on Me jacket and Boo on Me song, and but I was just still
Yeah,
in the character of being a real a-hole.
it have like a whole phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's
So if
really
you want to
cool.
hear Boo on Me, go to Spotify.
There you go.
I don't know how to go there. I have a flip phone that
Just
just
yeah,
talks to
just
me. But
go online, just Google it, and there you go.
yeah, Spotify, you can hear Boo on Me.
There you go. Larry, I just want to say thank you for coming on to Wrestling with Heart. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and
Are we
viewers.
done?
Yeah,
You're kidding.
yeah, it was about a half an hour or so.
Oh, well, you got a few. I got a couple more cool things to tell
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Yeah, so we can I'll send you a new link if we run on if we get cut here. So what did you want to talk
Well, I
about?
tell you what, I'm one of the stars of a movie on Amazon Prime called The Unbreakable Bunch.
Yes, I've
It's
heard
not a
about that.
wrestling movie. I want people to know about that. And then, about a few months ago, I got contacted to do it voiceovers on a new show called Shoot Pro. And you
Hmm.
can go Google Shoot Pro. In fact, they got some premieres showing. This is number 5 coming up this Sunday. If you go to shootpro.tv, it's on episode 5 coming up. And what it is, it's wrestling, but it's not professional wrestling. It's real, an ancient sport of submission wrestling. No punches, no kicks. It's the ultimate fight. I never got into. It's too sloppy. But this is purely submission wrestling of breaking your arm, popping your shoulder, and it's
Yeah.
real. It's real.
Wow.
Shoot Pro. I want people to know about it. Google Shoot Pro, wrestling.com, and it's going to be on YouTube Sunday. And then they got a TV deal with Triller, some new streaming thing starting up in 2 or 3 weeks. So keep an eye out for Shoot Pro.
All right. There you go.
It's
Thank
resurrection of an ancient sport, big with the Egyptians. The Romans are the ones that turned it into a bone breaking, nasty sport.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Larry, and
Well,
you're
you're
more than
welcome,
welcome to
Stan.
come
That
back.
went quick. I could talk to you more.
We'll do a part 2.
All right, you call me sometime. We'll do a part 2.
Will
In the
do.
meantime,
Larry, I just want to say thank you for coming on to Wrestling with Heart. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Uh, I know you've got a flip phone. I know you're not a huge fan of technology, but where can people find out more about you if you've got any fan pages or any kind of social media pages
oh
that
God, I
people
mean,
want?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, people can Google me. I mean, they can YouTube my man. I mean, I don't know how this stuff gets on there, but like the WWE bought all the old footage from the AWA and the WCW, and so you can Google me and find me all over the internet. But I don't put anything on because I just talk to human beings. Like I'll do a podcast because I can talk to you.
Hmm.
I'm not talking to a computer.
Well, Larry, thanks again, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Well, thanks. Just let me know. And
Talk to you soon.
okay, have a good one,
You
buddy.
too. Take care. Bye-bye. This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.